In today's episode of the Factory of the Future podcast, we are going to be interviewing Justin Dillon. Now, who is Justin Dillon? He is the founder and CEO of Freedom AI. Justin is an award-winning entrepreneur and author. He founded the enterprise software company Freedom AI with a mission of surfacing risks in supply chain to improve businesses and the world. Freedom AI is a supply chain risk management solution used by Fortune 500 companies to measure and mitigate risk ranging from human rights, trade, and geopolitical threats. Justin began working in technology and human rights over 10 years ago, advocating for the United Nations, the White House, and several Fortune 100 companies on supply chain transparency. He has been endorsed by 2 presidents, 3 secretaries of state, and 1 vice president. Justin has had his work and has been featured in Fast Company, CNN, MSNBC, Katie Couric, Dr. Phil, Wired, Vogue, and the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, TechCrunch, and several others. To me, that's a lot. Wow. He has spoken at the White House, the United Nations, the Vatican, Stanford, Google, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Chicago, the Clinton Global Initiative, and several others. He was recently awarded an honorary doctorate degree from his alum mater from which he works in innovations on justice. But what led all this was his work that he created called slaveryfootprint.org. By partnering with the U.S. Department and Google, a multi-award winning website that asks some simple questions. How many slaves work for you? And I got to tell you, Alexandria and I, we both took this survey, and it was very surprisingly what some of the results came out of. In this, Justin goes into the success this website has had and what is going on in the future of the supply chain, and how his work with slaveryfootprint.org and Freedom AI have a complement in supporting each other's causes. He is the author of the book, A Self-Plan to Change the World, which reveals the secret of life of the deep and lasting significance, the discovery that our need for meaning is linked to the needs of the world. A self-plan to change the world delivers a revolutionary method for meeting both needs. He directed and produced the film Call Plus Response, which was revealed in the world's 27 million distinct secrets. There are more slaves today than there have ever been in human history. The documentary, hope I got that right, was theoretically released around the world and became one of the top documentaries of 2008. He then produced and appeared in the CNN documentary Common Dreams with Grammy and Academy Award winning Common. Alexandria, we're very excited to have Justin on our podcast today, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did making it.
Welcome to Factory of the Future, People-Powered Health. Podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, 2 thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Factory of the Future. I'm here with A.W. Schultz. I'm Alexandria Burek, and today we're very excited to welcome a very special guest,
Justin Dillon. He's a jack of all trades. He's got a wide and colorful history and background, which we're very excited to get into today. So first, we'll start out with a little bit of the activism that you're doing. AW and I both participated and checked that out ahead of time. But before I kind of tell too much about it, I'd love for you, the expert and the one who created it, to tell us what the slavery footprint is.
Hi, well, it's a pleasure to be on the show with both of you. Thank you for having me on. We are going back a little bit when we talk about slavery footprint. Slavery footprint was a partnership with the U.S. State Department and eventually Google to help consumers understand their exposure to forced labor and child labor inputs into the goods that they use every day. So it's essentially a lifestyle survey that allows you to go in and answer questions about your life. Where do you live? How many houses or how many rooms in your house? Do you like peanuts? Do you like to fish? It just basically asks questions about your life in a pretty quick survey. While it's doing that, it's gathering data about your lifestyle and running calculations on the likelihood of forced or child labor entering into the goods that you consume. By the way, it doesn't count who you're buying it from. That's a really important point. So it's bringing in it's brand agnostic, but as this information comes in, it drives to a very, very simple score. It will tell you at the end of the footprint how many slaves it takes to run your life. We launched this a long time ago, almost 14 years ago, now under the Obama administration, with the hope of reaching 150,000 consumers. That was our target for the project. It was just an awareness piece. We wanted to reach 150,000 people in a year. We ended up reaching 150,000 people in an hour, and it's gone on to reach, I think, over 50 to 100 million people worldwide in every country other than North Korea.
Wow.
That's amazing. And then we'll get into the bio a little bit more on it, but this kind of led to the work that you've done on being mentioned in Fast Company. You spoke at the White House because of this. Is that the way to think about this? Is that what?
Sure, you can think about it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, again, it was a project. The State Department reached out to me after a project that I'd done earlier, where I'd put a film out. I came out of the music industry and I'd learned about human trafficking and wanted to do something about it. And I decided that we probably didn't want to put on a concert. What if we could make a film that would bring all these musicians and thought leaders and politicians together to talk about this issue? No one had heard about it before. That film ended up going to theaters and making quite a splash. And so on the back of that film, I created technology that anyone who went to see the movie could write to the brands that they love and ask them what they're doing in their supply chains around forced and child labor. Over 250,000 emails were sent, and those ended up getting, believe it or not, printed out and put on the desk of Governor Schwarzenegger at the time to pass the very first supply chain transparency bill in the world here in California. That story caught the attention of Secretary Clinton, who wrote an op-ed about that story, and then soon thereafter, the State Department called and said, it literally was, hey, let's do something together. What do you think about a slavery footprint? And I said, sounds terrible and awful. I'm in. That just sounds like a bummer calculator no one would ever want to use. I love the challenge. Let's see if we can crack it. It wasn't supposed to be that viral. That was back when things went viral. And so it ended up becoming such a meme that, people were going on the floor in Parliament and in Congress saying, I want to get this bill passed. I have 47 slaves working for me. So it became quite an interesting way in which people could bring their personal lives into something that feels untouchable. From that, and this part ties to some of the work I do today, that kind of created the groundswell for laws that have been passed, even import bans. President Obama passed an executive order because of all the consumers who use slavery footprint to ban imports of goods coming into the United States made with forced labor. And just almost about $4 billion worth of goods continue to be blocked today coming into the United States for suspicion of forced labor. So it really was I love movements, and you get to see the power of media and consumer voice and government and business kind of all working together to where today this is a very normal standard operating procedure is to, make sure that you're operating an ethical business in your supply chains.
I like how you mentioned. If you saw me move my head around, I just was reading a book about. It talks about the ethical responsibility of corporations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's similar to what you said, asking those companies what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it resonated, and I don't know where the book is, but
Yeah.
you came out of the music industry, but you're in supply chain now. So this transition to your own company, which is FRDM AI. What
Freedom.
does that do?
Yeah. Freedom AI. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Spells out. Yeah. We don't have the vowels. Yeah. It spells out freedom.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well,
Creative way.
before we move on, for the audience, can I ask one question? So with the slavery footprint, what is the average score of like maybe a conscious consumer versus somebody who's kind of just doing the worst? Like what would be
By the way, can we just call out the fact that your dogs are making your dog's barking and making my dog's bark? That's just a podcast. That's the world we live in. It's so good.
This is hilarious.
It's so good. So
This
what's
is
the
great.
average score? It's hard to say what the average score is. Obviously, when you buy more, when you're a young family, it's like the peak purchase, right? If you've got 2 or 3 kids, you're buying all kinds of stuff that have challenges in it. Goods that have, more of a prevalence of forced labor is kind of shifted over time. It's, it was for a while there, it's primarily cotton. We were talking about cotton out of Uzbekistan, a lot of child labor there. Then it shifted to Western China, which produces everything from solar panels to aluminum to tomatoes, right? And so the kind of outcroppings or outpourings of exploitation kind of gets moved around now. It's moved around a little bit to Malaysia and in some cases other parts of the world. The reality is anywhere where there is opportunity to exploit a workforce, where there is not strong rule of law, all the rest of it, there's always an opportunity to exploit people. It happens here in the United States as well. We've seen this in the fast food industry and the poultry industry as well. So no society, no country is immune to this. And businesses that want to address this have, there isn't any business that is pro child labor, at least on their website. But what they might not be is pro transparency in their supply chain. These laws have through these laws that have been passed all around the world. Another one is being passed in New Zealand right now, require companies to look into their supply chain, and that is having an incredible effect. It's making it difficult. I believe light is the greatest disinfectant, and so if you want to get rid of something in the world, you just put a light on it. I mean, we're having that conversation around the Epstein files right now. You just put light on something, and it kind of forces all the cockroaches to move. And that's essentially what these laws have done.
Wonderful. That's great. And okay, so go ahead, AW.
I was going to ask, because we have come across companies that are very conscious of their fabrics. And is it Pierogi? The sporting goods company?
Patagonia?
Yes, I was trying to look at Patagonia, where they'll lifetime repair your stuff. But I believe they make all their stuff in the U.S. Am I wrong, or do you know?
No,
Okay.
it's impossible. No, you can't source all that from the U.S. They might make it, but sourcing the materials that go into it is a bit of a global. And you're right. They're kind of the papal priest of ethical production, right? They've been doing this for so long, and quite frankly, they're not something to try to emulate. And as a matter of fact, they're so lauded and that it kind of creates cover for people like, well, that's Patagonia, that's who they are. The companies that excite me are the ones that you never think about, the contract manufacturers, the defense contractors that no one's ever heard of, that are doing really deep work in their supply chains, the pharmaceutical companies that are pushing deeper in their supply chains. Companies aren't ethical, people are. And so, and it just depends on how much and how far you can push into that in a business. What's great about companies is when leadership allows for that, allows for responsible sourcing to be a priority in their company, then you start to see, and we can talk about what responsible sourcing is, then you start to see kind of the manifest change in the supply chain. It comes down to something very simple. I have $1, you need $1. I want to make sure that my values are protected and follow my dollar. When my dollar finds its way through the supply chains, becomes 80 cents and becomes 60 cents at every tier in the supply chain, I want to know that that money is not just creating value, but is holding my values. And you can do that. And that is what procurement does. And so that's what these laws have created. And that's what we're starting to see around the world. It's quite exciting.
So are you helping people improve their EcoVadis rating through, specifically the ethical sourcing and tracing back the supply chain, or how do you fit into that?
We're, EcoVadis and our company, I would put us, we both belong in a fruit bowl, but one's a banana, one's an apple, right? So
okay.
we're very different. They help companies do ratings and understand the processes, or the policies and procedures. Processes, I don't know if that's a word. The policies and procedures of a company. So it's a great measurement and that tells you how this company is operating. Very deep surgical dive into their policies and procedures. We're a bit different. We ingest procurement data from the company through their procurement system, out of their ERP, just that alone. And from that, we're able to build a map of their entire supply chain and build risk analysis. So everything from human rights to geopolitical to greenhouse gas, we can help them understand the materiality risk, who is in their supply chain. Essentially, we say that we help our customers read their supplier's mail, meaning they know more about their supplier's supply chain than their suppliers do. And there's a big movement around that right now, around supply chain resilience, transformation, digitization, all of these buzzwords. Essentially, this is what the world wants. They want to trust their supply chain again. They want to know that what is coming is real. Again, back to light is the greatest disinfectant. If you want trust, you have to build transparency. And that sort of lifts all boats. And so we give that instant transparency and that instant risk analysis to our customers, who then use that intelligence to start working with their suppliers and protecting their values. And it's not a stick, it's a carrot. We don't go around and assume that companies are bad, ever. We just assume that companies need more help to be able to live up to the values that they say on their website. So that's all this is.
Yeah. And I recently saw, something where I was reading a sustainability report recently that, even with kind of certain things going on, people are not changing course. They're sticking to their sustainability targets. They're sticking to sustainability goals. And I'm personally very encouraged about that. I think it's incredibly important to be a responsible consumer, but also a responsible business, no matter how big or small you are. What, I guess, would be one really cool example that you could share with us about something that you uncovered through helping one of your clients or helping one of these companies that was just like, we never saw this coming? Or do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we're really helping our customers do in the US is expose their visibility to Western China. And there's no way to do that just by looking at your tier one suppliers and saying,
right.
And you'll see companies go, no, we have no exposure to Western China. All our companies are, XYZ. When you map a supply chain, you very quickly, 1, 2, 3 tiers back, can see where things go. And that has changed the game when it comes to procurement now, where that risk becomes a part of the process. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change that supplier or remediate that supplier, but it does give our customers a little bit of extra coverage when they go to market or when they're managing risk in their current supplier base. One of the things we've also done with our customers is really kind of help their suppliers remain accountable when it comes to geopolitical risks. We've got customers that have a no-go zone in the supply chain. Certain countries you can't do business with anywhere in your supply chain. Some suppliers would just say, sure, we don't operate in there, but they have no idea. Our intelligence layers on top of that supplier and brings that back to the customer and says, actually, you can see 2 tiers back, it's going through a country you don't want it to. It's up to you if you want to go, beat that supplier up. But the reality is maybe they just don't know. And they just kind of told you what you wanted to hear. So from that standpoint, it's putting a lot more surety and trust, or the road to trust with customers, saying, you might just be saying what I want to hear. here's what's really going on. Now, what are you going to do? And I like that tension, because it starts to build a partnership between buyers and suppliers instead
Yeah.
of we're just going to cancel the contract and move on, which seldom happens.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine that your normal clients are, I want to say, want to do well, and they reach out to you because the services you provide, and is that kind of a normal? Do you see a gamut? Of
No one
different?
buys our software for altruistic reasons.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it is that's the joy of the work that we get to do is we get to do well and do good. And you can actually optimize the supply chain while also fixing ethics and sustainability in a supply chain. And I will tell you right now, that is the only algorithm that's going to work. Is you cannot do good at the expense of doing well.
Yeah.
That math doesn't math. Like you can optimize the supply chain, and by optimizing, you reduce the amount of emissions in that supply chain. That's truly a win-win. So we're no longer in the era which we were a few years ago, where everyone was virtue signaling around sustainability and having no idea and setting goals that no one would be around for, much less alive to see. That era
Hmm.
is over. Um, it is now more of a practical, industrialized process that's less about virtue signaling and more about just making supply chains work better and building trust. And that's actually math that makes sense to me. The math that says we're going to do something in 30 years, I don't understand that math.
Yeah.
Especially the people that are saying it that aren't going to be there. So they're just pulling all the marketing equity out of these goals that they're setting, and no one's going to be around to do it. Now that because of the political environment and the geopolitical environment, things have changed just to how do we structurally fix supply chains to fix all of these problems. And it turns out when you optimize, when you build transparency, you also build ethics and sustainability. It happens to work really, really well. And
Yeah.
performance goes.
But, I have this theory or this kind of mantra that I live by. So my background is in DOT compliance. So I kind of was overseeing like small trucking companies and trucking operations. I still do some of that today. And I always say that an efficient fleet is a compliant fleet. So businesses could take the same kind of concept. And I've gotten to know a company, Greener. They help companies reduce their CO2 emissions and accurately report with the very clean data directly from the source of the trucks and all this stuff. And they're doing great work. And we always say that a sustainable fleet, if you're doing sustainability, you're saving money. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here. And that's what gets me excited about it, because you're exactly right. Businesses are not going to just throw money and reduce margins for the good of the world, right? But if you can make a compelling, savings case alongside of doing well, it's a win-win, like you said. So that's really awesome. I'm really excited about that.
It's the only value prop. It's the only thing that gets you in the door, right? And
Right.
so we don't even tell our customers that we give away 5% of all their subscription fees to frontline projects that are pulling kids out of forced labor.
That's great.
We don't lead with that because that's not important.
Right.
It's
Oh, and by
just
the way,
yeah, it is. It's important in the tail, but it's not important it's not how you get in the door. We're not here
right.
just, and I think that we've had to kind of detox off of the 2015s to 2020s, which was a great era. But you got to remember, there was a lot of excitement around sustainable development goals and all this stuff, which a lot of people kind of get excited about, but don't really understand. People really only stand structural, practical things now. And so all of those goals and ambitions need to be layered into how do I optimize the supply chain? Hey, if we're going to nearshore a supply chain, guess what? Less shipping, less fuel, less
Yep.
emissions. That's a
Yep.
win. You call that a win. The same thing goes to when it comes to moving critical minerals around. Critical minerals is a defense. Once we pulled back the layer of with everything that's going on in tariffs, we realized that 1 in 10 suppliers to the Department of Defense are Chinese suppliers. That means if China says at any point, no, stop doing business with the U.S., a world of hurt,
Yeah.
right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's going to happen, but I'm like, our vulnerabilities start to show up when you start to, put this level of transparency of how trade gets done. To me, my theory and the theory that we work on in freedom, and I've always worked on, is there is opportunity in chaos. That's the only place you're going to create change, is in discomfort. And I see a lot of opportunities to build better supply chains that are more resilient, more effective, more ethical, more sustainable.
Okay.
That's awesome.
I'm starting to piece it together with you. Your the slavery footprint, freedom.ai, and I see the connection between the website and your message that's going out there. And wow, you're doing a lot of good out there, and it sounds like there's probably even more to come. I mean, you've done some great things over a short amount of time, 14 years, I think it was what you said, right?
Well, yeah. Well, my job is to make it easy for other people to do good. That's my job in the world. So to build the technology, it's the consumers that got the laws passed, right? 50 million consumers around the world. There is now, supply chain transparency laws in almost every Western country. That was consumers doing that. Our job is to help all the customers that come on Freedom and all of their suppliers, of which there's, close to 1 million suppliers that actually 4 million suppliers that we're monitoring Freedom. Our job is to help them do their best. And you can do that that's the great thing about technology. You can help people get to their best. And so I appreciate that. But the interesting part of it is one thing leads to another. There was with all the consumers understanding their own slavery footprint, there was no way to fix it unless you went into supply chains. I came to the realization, it's like, I found myself on CNN and then, NPR and Wall Street Journal talking about supply chains, but I'm like, I don't know anything about supply chains. Like, I just know that's probably where we're going to fix this. We can only pass so many laws and only build so much awareness unless there is a pathway to fix this and address this. And the reality is most companies I think it's less than 30% or 10% of companies have visibility beyond tier 1. That's a real problem to solve, because once you start to build that transparency and risk analysis, then companies can start making better decisions. So that's what led us to start Freedom.
Cool. So how do you get the information on the tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers, or any suppliers at all? Like, how do you go about collecting that? Like, what is the methodology there?
Oh, it's just AI. No, I'm kidding. We've built a model that can search and read trade data, everything from supply chains to ownership records, you name it, instantly, and stitch it together and build a map of supply chains in seconds. All we need is the trading partner that you're working with, the supplier that you're working with, and from there we can build that out. That's kind of table stakes now. A lot of companies are doing that. I think where the real opportunity now is helping companies translate all this data into insights and actions that they can actually take. And that actually is where AI helps quite a bit. It's an enormous amount of information. Behind one supplier, we can have 85,000 sub-suppliers. No one's gonna go through that.
Yeah.
With all kinds of sanctions and oligarchs and all kinds of crazy, the strikes happening. We pick up, like, if there's a strike in the supply chain anywhere within a certain amount of kilometers of a supplier, like, it's too much information. Training AI to be able to process this through the lens of a procurement or category manager and understand, like, is this risk salient and proximate, and is it disruptive to the business? That's where AI is really showing up.
And then do you guys work with your clients to provide like a prioritization, like, here's your hit list of the first 3 priorities you've got to do, and then they go execute? Or do you guys have a whole partnership where you work through the whole process to find new suppliers as well?
Yeah, so we can provide alternative suppliers. I actually think that's going to be the next 5 years of our work is what we call the replacement economy, which is here's the cost, the price of the product, here's the price of the time to delivery, all the stuff that you do when you go out to market. But then there's also, here's the cost of transparency, and here's the cost of the risks that are inherent in the supply chain and what those look like. And so those are starting to find their way to the point of purchase, so to speak, in the B2B space. So we absolutely provide the opportunities for finding alternative suppliers. And I think the market forces are going to drive suppliers to be more self-disclosing about information that companies need. I think that's going to become a real opportunity for companies in the marketplace to push all this information forward instead of just keeping it buried inside of their own business. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, almost like a self-serve sustainability page on their website where you can go and just pull the information that you need versus having to go do this song and dance with procurement, and then procurement have to go and, sales, or has to go and do all these surveys and questions. Just put it out there in the first place, cut right to the end.
If we do anything good in the world, it's killing surveys.
Yeah.
We want
It's
to
a waste.
destroy questionnaires. It's a hallucination. It's a consensual hallucination that we're getting somewhere. Now, that being said, we do have we call them modules, but like we are just, and we as a company get pulled into the consensual hallucination of IT security surveys all the time that are not applicable to our. I mean, why do we do this? And this is, if imagine the amount of speed that we can get in commerce if we just remove that just really silly step of trying to get information. So I'm excited about crushing that space.
Cool. That's good. AW, do you have anything to add, or are we about wrapping it up?
Yeah, I mean, Justin, is there any kind of message you want to get out there? I mean, you've already brought a lot to us, but if there's anything, last words that you might want to have, I think that you really kind of educate us a lot about on the concerns that there is in supply chain. If somebody wanted to find out more about supply chain and some of the kind of the down and dirty that goes into it, is there a good site that you recommend or a good place to go circle around?
Well, we've built a couple. So FRDM.ai has lots of resources where you can learn about the laws, requirements, and really get resources. We produce our own podcast. We're really here to, obviously we're a SaaS solution trying to help companies. But we're also resource-based. We have our own podcast called The Responsible Supply Chain Show, where we're really trying to help this new role that is developing inside of companies to really win and succeed. And so our job is to resource them, of course, on a personal angle, going to Slate Your Footprint, learning that, talking to your friends, talking to your classmates, talking to your family about what that means. But the last piece is that I think is really important is when I was running Slate Your Footprint, one of our funders, because it was a charity, one of our funders was the founders of eBay. And every so often we would get to, spend time with them. And Pierre Midyar, who started eBay, brought a bunch of us together one time and told us about the founding of eBay, which is a million years now. But they said that when, they were founding eBay, no one, we just get in cars in people's houses now from the internet. We don't even think twice. People were scared to put their credit card on the internet. Like, that was a real fear. And they knew they had to get over that fear. And there had to be some like grounding principles or philosophies that they as a company believed in. And the grounding philosophy is that most people are good.
Yes.
And you have to operate with that. Most people are good. Our news feeds and social feeds say otherwise. It's not true. Most people are good and want to do good for their family. If you start with that from a grounding principle, you can actually do a lot in the world. I think it's a waste of time to go around pointing fingers at suppliers or things that are happening. What you have to focus on is make the assumption and believe in the belief that most people are good, and then build ways in which they can execute on that goodness. And that's all we try to do, and we hope that others will do it as well.
That's absolutely wonderful. I want to call out your book before we end the podcast, because I think it has a great message for anyone at any stage in their career. So your book is called A Selfish Plan to Change the World, Finding Big Purpose in Big Problems, right? That's the name of it. And it can be found, I'm sure, anywhere. So I would highly recommend everybody going out and checking that out, along with all the other things Justin's doing.
Great. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I think we're checking out.
We're out of here like finished goods.
That's a great line. There you go.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.